Is my mic on? Yeah. Yeah, Mercury is finally in the microwave. Hello, everyone, and thank you for being here. I am Erika Beach, and today we're talking about Mercury retrograde in Cancer. And as Mercury is my Time Lord, I can't help but to make a video about it this week. What makes Mercury retrograde more interesting, in fact, is that Mercury is stationing at 26 degrees of Cancer, the same point as Venus and Jupiter conjunct last month on June 9th. That also means that the fixed star Procyon will be activated. And so this video, we will go over the basics of Mercury retrograde and what it means in the sign of Cancer. Then we will talk about the fixed star Procyon very briefly and how Mars entering in Gemini and Jupiter entering into Leo will color this Mercury in Cancer transit. And lastly, we will go over how to work with this energy. And if you want to check out my previous video on the Venus and Jupiter conjunction with Procyon, I've linked it up here or right here, and see how this Mercury retrograde transit may play out for you. For consultations, make sure to go to my website to book a reading, and also don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. And now let's get started. On June 29th, Mercury starts its retrograde motion at 26 degrees and will station to move direct on July 23rd at 16 degrees Cancer. So the moon becomes the host of Mercury's entire journey in Cancer. So Mercury's condition is very dependent on what the moon does. If you follow the moon during this retrograde, you can see where some of the topics might spill over into your chart. At the beginning of this Mercury retrograde, Mercury will be conjunct the fixed star Procyon at the same time it stations. And we know Procyon is the star associated with quick success, rapid advancements, intelligence, cleverness, and opportunities that disappear suddenly and may come suddenly, which I will cover in this video later on. But we also have a few more transits that are creating a story for Mercury retrograde, because in this next full moon in Capricorn is literally happening the following day after Mercury goes retrograde, and Mars will be in Gemini, as well as Jupiter entering Leo. On July 12th, Mercury will go through a Cazimi with the Sun. This is a time called the heart of the Sun. It's a renewal process or a rebirth as it conjuncts the Sun, and it gets ready to slow down, Mercury, right? To slow down and make its direct motion in a few weeks after. It is also a regenerative and a purification time that Mercury goes through while in the heart of the Sun. And it's a moving forward with a new creative idea or a time where opportunities in communication and learning will be a little bit more fluid. This is also a period where the Sun protects Mercury from being burnt from its rays. And suddenly we are offered, again, another opportunity for something else. Anne Ortley always explains it Cazimi like when you run your fingers through a candle and you don't get burnt. So there's like this protective measure, right, with the Cazimi. So it kind of gives the same feeling of protection and cleanliness. But the Cazimi can act in the same way. Then finally, Mercury will station to move direct on July 23rd and begin its renewal journey as a morning star. Mythically, Mercury is Hermes, the messenger Greek god. He is the mediator between heaven and earth, and he was the guide of the souls in the underworld, as he is the only god that was able to move between both realms. This is why Mercury rejoices in both day charts and night charts. And he finds his joy in the first house, the house where the horizon brings the night and the day together. The house that is, the first house is that house before the gate of Hades, the second house. But Hermes was also the messenger of dreams. And now in Cancer, even more so, our dreams will become strong. As in Cancer especially, Mercury is related to dreams and memory. And Mercury retrograde is, again, delays, reviews. It's a time to revise, recover, reversals. It's a time to reconnect and remember, retrieve, and a time maybe perhaps of miscommunications. We know Mercury is the sign of communication, thoughts, and thinking. Its principle of intellect, speech, meditation, mental flexibility, the manner of judging, and the manner of deciding. It also symbolizes breath, the nervous system, the respiratory system, the unconscious mind, curiosity, and the ability to learn and the thirst for knowledge. It represents merchants and poets and salespeople and children, researchers, analysts, journalists, and in Cancer, especially artisans. During Mercury retrograde, Mercury can appear to be going backwards, but he really isn't going backwards. What he really is doing is he's orbiting between the Earth and the Sun. So it's not what backwards, it just appears like it. Now we add the sign of Cancer, a water sign, into Mercury's realm. We know Cancer is deeply connected to memory, ancestry, roots, and emotional inheritance, things that we have emotional connections to. It's Mercury being influenced by deep-seated emotional patterns, what makes us comfortable. This can also become a very protective and internal, very inward Mercury. Psychologically, this may feel like a period of remembering. Unconscious desires will cause a person to look at some facts and ignore others, and making us a little biased, but also emotional intensity related to our thoughts. So this can be a period where we need to pause. A lot of that mental process occurs unconsciously in the sign of in the sign of Cancer with Mercury. And so it absorbs information as a water sign. It's a container for emotional belonging, things that connect us. It can also make us very sensitive to the attitudes and opinions of others. It's a very sensitive placement, as you can see, but its thinking also revolves around home, family, and again, what gives us comfort in order to protect ourselves. Mercury in Cancer can also be related to matters related to food, real estate, domestic issues. Mercury in Cancer is really good with memory. Remember, Hermes was the messenger of God and the messenger of dreams. And now in Cancer, even more so, our dreams will become strong. Mercury retrograde in Cancer often retrieves all those old stories from the past, the nostalgia, the childhood memories as well, and also family narratives. With Mercury in Cancer, we can become easily influenced, and what makes us sensitive to others. It's bringing perception to an idea or to an uncomfortable truth that needs to come to light. Perhaps emotional patterns may shape present choices that we make. And now, Procyon involved, it overlays a small narrative here where insights might arrive unexpectedly. And like I mentioned at the beginning of this video, Mercury retrograde is stationing at 26 degrees of Cancer, which is activating the same point as Venus and Jupiter's conjunction back on June 9th earlier in this month. And when a planet stations on a degree that has already been activated by benefics, it can often revisit and reopen those topics that were seeded earlier. Then Mercury here becomes the messenger returning to that place that had already been blessed or touched by Venus and Jupiter. And Mercury retrograde, again, tends to review, revise, recover, reconnect, and remember. Since Mercury does station on that point that Venus and Jupiter were together, the retrograde may bring us back to those matters that occurred. Those positive things that just influences, like the things that were related to beliefs and values regarding relationships, our alliances, our family matters, home, belonging, that emotional security, beliefs of what we value surrounding our educational and spiritual opportunities, our creative projects that are coming to light, but also questions of faith and hope. Rather than introducing something new, Mercury here may reveal the deeper meaning of something that already appeared around the beginning of June during that Venus and Jupiter conjunction, that we might have missed, because again, Procyon brings things very quickly, and perhaps we have an opportunity to fix something. So whatever came up during that time, Mercury will bring a message or act as the messenger, reminding you of what really is important, what relationships are more endearing to you, and what new ideas and projects that came up during that time you want to continue with, what you value. This is a decan associated with the Three of Cups, and this is the card of joy, of creativity, and celebration. It's the three women cheersing. The cups is, cups hold, they serve as a container for our emotions and intuition, and it allows ourselves to be guided by that. Now, the conjunction to the fixed star Procyon adds another layer. Procyon is at 26 degrees, and we know it's the star associated with quick success, rapid movement, intelligence, cleverness, and opportunities that appear suddenly. But yet, in traditional authors also note that Procyon can produce gains that are difficult to sustain if one acts too hastily. So pause. The image of Procyon is often described as the dog that rises before the dog, arriving before the brightest star, Sirius. It suggests anticipation, getting there first, seeing something before others do, or like Bernadette Brady explains it as a firework effect. Boom, don't miss it. And so we know that the fixed star Procyon is associated with the nature of Mercury and Mars. So when a configuration is involved with a fixed star and the configuration of planets are in those nature, Mercury and Mars here, it adds an extra layer and it becomes significant. And here it's Mercury or Mars in Gemini answering to a retrograde Mercury. So there is the nature of Mercury acting as a quick messenger during the beginning of this retrograde. And a conversation can happen, right? It can be through a photograph. Someone shares a photo with you. It could be a dream, family stories, or a chance encounter that can suddenly reveal why a current situation mattered, or it can reveal something that needs to shift. In Cancer, Mercury has the tendency to hesitate to be open, especially with strangers. It's the sign of the crab. It's the hard shell, so they tend to be very protective, right? And Mercury on Procyon adds that layer of important news arriving suddenly, a forgotten message resurfacing, revisiting a decision that was made too quickly, or correcting assumptions or misinformation that you can reconsider an opportunity that seems so obvious at first glance, but you missed it back earlier in June. Or perhaps it's discovering overlooked details in situations, and Procyon brings that speed. Luckily, with Mars and Gemini answering to a retrograde Mercury, it can help us slow down, pause before we act. This can be particularly helpful for us, right? Especially when Mars and Gemini tends to be very speedy. We're usually quick and sharp, and actions and communications tend to be very, impulsive. So it's important to note that Mercury will make decisions according to the planet of action, Mars. And with Mars again being hosted by Mercury in Cancer, this can definitely influence us to take a pause before we act and making decisions and being present with our emotions. Time to revise all of these feelings and communication patterns that no longer serve us. Mars also signifies conflicts, so Mars will help us to slow down our actions, which becomes very important during this time. Mars will be conjunct Uranus on July 4th, pushing us forward towards that change. Uranus wants sudden changes to what's no longer working. It's, something will be broken down in order to, what do they say? A breakdown for a breakthrough, right? Mars enters Gemini on June 28th, just before this Mercury retrograde. And Mars entering Gemini around the same day really changes the tone of this Mercury retrograde, because Mars immediately comes under Mercury's rulership. It's almost as if Mars is waiting in the background and getting ready to act on something in the, behind the scenes. And in Mercury's house, maybe he's starting to get a little impatient. But yeah, Mercury's waiting. He's standing still, preparing his entrance, right? So Mars, the planet of action, conflict, courage, and initiative, is now taking instructions from Mercury that is paused. He's reflective and looking backward rather than forward. And Mars being influenced by this, brings debates. It can also bring wanting this investigative nature, multitasking. It gathers information and it responds quickly. But again, Mercury retrograde, Mars's usual speed is redirected. He's slowing down. So this is good for us, right? During this Mercury retrograde to pause. Again, this is slowing us down, to revisit, to pause, to revise. Did you miss something? Look over things. What do I need to look over before moving forward? And it's also about taking action. Mars wants to move and Mercury wants to review. So then we have Mars conjunct Uranus on July 4th. How perfect, right? And from our own internal and personal view, this is pushing us forward again towards change. Uranus ignites forward movement, and movement is change, right? So Mars can be accidents as well. And with Uranus, it could mean explosives. And so I would be very cautious during this 4th of July for handling fireworks. And again, Procyon is active as Mercury is the messenger, that started back at 26 degrees. And this means that Procyon, again, is activating and sending a message. And so again, be careful. This Procyon, it works like a firework, right? Or perhaps the weather can hinder fireworks during the 4th of July. Again, this is the nature of Mercury and Mars answering to Mercury. So the fact that Mars is answering to this retrograde makes it even more significant, and the need to really go over whatever we started back approximately June 9th during the Venus-Jupiter conjunction. Again, it's almost as if Mercury is teaching Mars patience. Mars in Gemini doesn't like patience, right? Here, Mercury is reviewing emotional memory, family history, and questions of belonging. This also now brings two themes related to Jupiter: belonging, Jupiter in Cancer, and the greater meaning of it, your greater meaning of beliefs, and especially now that Jupiter in Cancer is ending its journey and now that Jupiter's entering Leo on June 30th, a place where he might want to shine and expand something, but perhaps it's a time where we might want to dim our own light, and that's might be part of the journey in Leo. And in my last video, I did go over Jupiter in Leo and how its relationship to Saturn and what to expect during this Jupiter in Leo transit. So you can probably find it right there if you're interested. But either way, it's a time where we are shifting perspective, specifically something that came up again the beginning of June, and now we are reviewing, revising, revisiting all the R's, right? And reconnecting. And some of my collective thoughts, and I don't want to say predictions, but just some of the themes or some of the things that we may see is, I'll give you one example. So I love football or soccer. And right now we have the FIFA World Cup. And as you know, right now with Jupiter in Cancer, everyone is just very nostalgic and going over who they belong with, what ancestry and culture and their roots and how they belong, how they connect, right? But with Mars in answering to Mercury in the sign of Gemini, that it's also conflicts. It could also be wrongful calls. And so if we're talking about the FIFA World Cup in soccer, so perhaps with Mars and Gemini answering to a retrograde Mercury in Cancer, perhaps there's going to be wrongful calls. Perhaps, calls might be rooted in emotion, wrongful penalties that might really shift things, right? calls that become legendary, very much, like the Mexico and Netherlands. But it could also be the referees speak different languages, so there could be some sort of conflict that comes through wrongful calls or miscommunication during these football games, which has happened. But that's just one part of what I think. Perhaps a lot of plays may be revisited during games, or maybe, hopefully not, there may be some injuries during the sporting events, especially during the World Cup. That can happen, again, especially with Mars, the planet of accidents and injuries in the sign of Gemini, where it also represents sports. So, like I mentioned before, firework accidents, and it's all happening around the 4th of July as well. So during this Mercury retrograde and the day Uranus is conjunct Mars, everyone just be more cautious, right? So how do we integrate this Mercury retrograde into your birth chart, and who will be most affected and feel it the most during this time? So first, my Cancer placements, especially between 16 degrees and 26 degrees. All the cardinal signs, Aries, Cancer, Libra, and Capricorn, because this will make a strong aspect in your chart, and it will be falling on one of your important angles in your house, the 4th, 5th, 7th, or 10th. Also, Virgo and Gemini placements. Why? Of course, because they're Mercury ruled. So if you have anything between 16 to 26 degrees, that will also be a very big influence. So again, go back to your chart if you have any of these cardinal rising signs or placements as well, and in addition to Gemini and Virgo, as they are both Mercury ruled. So go look and see if you have any of these placements in those houses, and in order to figure out how this will play out for you, just kind of look around and see where those placements are. Something else as well is if Mercury is your time lord, like me, so Gemini house Mercury, so you will feel this a lot more. I have felt every Mercury retrograde since it became my time lord, and so I know I'm going to feel the shift. So I'm like, why not make a video? But also another perfection that you should look at is if your perfection house is in the sign of Cancer, because this is where Mercury will retrograde and you will feel it strongly. So look at that house and see where it will affect you. So make sure you look at your chart and let me know in the comments below if you have any placements in these degrees or signs, and if you've already felt some of the effects in some of your areas. So make sure to comment below. But another note to take is that this year, all of Mercury retrogrades are occurring in water signs. Like in February, we had it in Pisces. Now we have it in Cancer, and next one will be in October and in Scorpio, where Venus will also be retrograde. And again, these are all water signs. This draws us inward and it's internal. So for me, it's my time lord, and it's really asking me to go over all of these internal matters and emotions that define me and align with my belief systems. Gemini rules my 9th house. So, across all 12 signs, this Mercury retrograde feels less like a period of delay and more of like a period of integration. The Venus and Jupiter conjunction in Cancer planted seeds of growth and love and connection, but most emotional abundance. Mercury returns to that same degree and allows us to take these gifts and help us understand them a little bit more fully. Because the station occurs right on Procyon, insights may arrive suddenly and through perhaps remembering conversations, or perhaps an old email or an encounter with someone, realizing that things that make you change your perspective, right? And then you have the full moon in Capricorn immediately following this. So whatever Mercury uncovers has the potential to illuminate, bring to light, right? A balance between our private emotional lives, Cancer, and our public responsibility, Capricorn. Mars in Gemini slows down the process and it shifts our actions from very swift, quick, into more cautious and a slower way. But this is also Mercury reviewing emotional memory, family history, our roots, and questionings of belonging. Mars, the planet of conflict and war and confrontation, wants us to talk about it. and perhaps difficult conversations or family discussions because Jupiter is active, and also political debates, right? Jupiter rules that. And Uranus will bring sudden and unexpected news or information to us. But altogether here, this is something to do with flat out communication, thinking, information, receiving information as well as giving it, guiding and understanding. We are moving with better information, clearer information. Mercury is retracing its steps in Cancer. Our greatest strength won't be reacting first. It's going to be asking better questions, revisiting important conversations, making sure that the next move is rooted both in wisdom, knowledge, truth, but most important, emotional truth. Thank you so much for being here today, and I hope that we can meet each other in the next video. Until next time, bye.